Hi, today I want to talk about the preprocessor and show you what it can do. So on the screen here, I've got a very simple little Hello World program. The -E option for GCC allows us to print out the output that comes out of a preprocessor before it goes to the C compiler. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to comment out the include for the standard IO, and I'm going to save that, and I'm going to do a GCC-E, capital E, which will give us the output, and my program is called main.c. Okay, so there's a bunch of little comments to the compiler, and it's basically stuff it's going to get passed to the compiler, and down there you get your program output. So it really didn't do much. These are basically line number commands saying that it went through GCC, and it doesn't really tell it too much at all. Now let's modify our program. So I'm just going to go in and say number sign define pi as 3.14 for lack of a better thing, and down here I will put in double, we'll call it n, and we'll set it equal to pi. Okay, save that and run that through GCC. And now if you look at the output, it's got the usual stuff it added before. The define pi equals 3.14 has been removed, and where we used pi down there, it's actually been replaced by 3.14. So this is what really gets past the compiler. It really does go through and replace all those macros with the real definition. Okay, so let's go and modify our program again. And this time I'm going to uncomment the include, so you can see what actually comes in with standard IO. Save that. Run my GCC. And now, not only do you see that it's replaced pi there, but it's got function lock, a bunch of things about extern ID, CTerm ID. We go back. There's pclose, popen. Eventually you'll get to some of the stuff. File numbers, Terror, which is one of the common things, file number, and eventually you'll get, there's FEOF, which you'll see later in the course. And there's quite a few of them. These are all the fseeks and the rewinds. Fwrite, fread, ungetC, putS. We'll be talking about those in this course. So there's getLine down there, getS. So these are all the standard input-output functions. There's putchar, a couple variations on it, putc, fgetc, and they're spaced out, but it doesn't really matter because it's all going to a compiler. And so here's variations on scanf. And there's scanf itself. So if you look through it, you'll see all the scanfs and all the printfs and all the file IO things, and that all comes in as a header file from when we include standard IO.h. So it really does replace that include with the body of the header file, which comes out of where it's stored in the system. Then it goes through and defines the macros and whatever. Now we can go and create our own header file. Let's just create a thing called header.h. And I'll put the usual stuff in it. I'll say number sign, if, and def, header h. And in there, I will say, I don't know, and I'll just put it in. It doesn't really make any sense to do something. J equals 8. Just to have something in there. And put my endif. I'm going to save that away. And I'm going to go back to my main. And I'm going to put in a new include that says include header.h. Going to save that, run that through GCC again. And couldn't find header.h. Guess that's pretty, what do they call that? Didn't I just create that variable? Oh, I called it header.c by mistake. Okay, let's fix that up with the move command. What are GCC again? Okay, now you see that it's got the functions. It's included standard IO. Now it's including header.h. There's your int j equals 8 that it got out of it. And so whatever comes in from that header file, it just includes. Now these are line number information, and that's how it provides information for your debugger. And the debugger can tell you what line it was on when things went wrong. And if it's in a header file, this is how it references what line it was on in the header file. But you see it does bring in the header file. Okay, let's go back to main, and I want to make one more change to it. And before we do that, I want to show you what happens if we actually define header_h, which means that before you include the header file, that'll actually be defined. Which means that since the header file checks to see if it is defined and only includes things if it's not defined, we should not see that int n appear anymore. Let's save that, run it through GCC again. And now you see, oh, there's the end of standard IO. It brings in header.h, but it doesn't bring anything in there because it already had the macro defined. And that's how, if it's already defined that macro by including the header file previously, it never includes it again. So that ends our little description of how to use header files and why you have those if-defs around things, if-ndef and define followed by that, and that gives you protection from including the same thing twice, which would confuse it a lot. So thanks for listening. Talk to you in the next video.